Before I had my near-death experience, I was a full-fledged atheist, firm in my belief that once you die, that's it. Just dirt. No afterlife, no heaven or hell. I was convinced that life was a random series of events, and when it ended, there was nothing more. The thought of God seemed ridiculous to me, especially after everything I'd been through. My childhood was a mess. Traumatic, painful, things no child should have to endure. I couldn't fathom that a loving God would let that happen to me. So, I shut myself off from any belief in him. If there was a God, he was the reason for my suffering, and I wasn't about to open myself to more hurt. But everything changed in an instant. After my experience, one that I can only describe as brutal, I was left questioning everything. I found myself walking into Walgreens in a daze and grabbing a Bible. I had no idea what I was doing. It felt like an impulse, but it wasn't just any impulse. It was a thirst to understand something I had completely rejected before. Suddenly, I thought I was the second coming of Christ. I started talking to strangers, touching people, telling them about this God I barely understood. I was out of control, lost in my own journey of awakening. It was crazy, sure, but it was also the beginning of something much bigger than I could ever have imagined. Before my near-death experience, my life was a constant battle. Trauma, addiction, poverty, and pain surrounded me every single day. I grew up in a world where survival was the only priority. It was a world where I thought it was completely normal to steal groceries, to have eviction notices pinned to the door, and to move houses every year like it was just part of life. I didn't know any better. I didn't realize that what I was living wasn't normal. It was my reality. My parents, like many around us, turned to substances to cope. Every time they took a pill or drank, it was like they could escape their pain, their worries, even if only for a brief moment. And as a child, I noticed this. I took mental notes. I told myself, when I can get my hands on whatever that is, I'll do it too. Addiction became my coping mechanism, my escape route. I didn't need to be taught. I picked it up from the environment around me. It was all subconscious, and in that first 7 years of my life, I learned more than I realized. When I turned 23, everything hit rock bottom. My parents, caught in the grips of their addiction, decided they couldn't bear the pain anymore. In 2007, they overdosed together. They left me and my sister with nothing but a heartbreaking note that read, "Take care of each other." How could we even understand what that meant at the time? Their death shattered me, but it also sent me deeper into addiction. It became my new parent, my higher power. I abandoned everything, my sister, my life, my moral compass. I moved across the country, searching for some way to numb the unbearable grief. I didn't know how to deal with the overwhelming pain, so I chose to inflict pain on others. I became the abuser, the perpetrator, believing that it was the only role left for me to play. But deep down, there was a part of me that knew. This wasn't the end of the story. The pain, the suffering, and the darkness, it couldn't define me forever. There had to be something more, and it wasn't until later, when I had my near-death experience, that I began to understand why I chose this path, why I chose these parents, and what my soul was really craving. What I know now is that my soul wanted to experience it all, the highs and the lows, the darkness and the light. It wasn't random. It wasn't a cosmic accident. My journey was my own choice, a path that would shape me in ways I couldn't have imagined. And it was only through that pain that I would eventually find my way back to healing. I used to believe that healing was a personal journey, something only for me to take on. But now I know that healing goes far beyond just the self. It's a chain that links back through generations and stretches forward into the future. When I heal, it's not just for me. It's for my parents, my ancestors, and for the souls that will come after me. The wounds of our bloodlines, those traumas, addictions, and cycles of abuse, are not just passed down. They're carried forward in our DNA. But it only takes one soul to break that cycle. It only takes one person to stand up, to heal, and to say, enough. I feel that weight. The weight of being that person for my family, for the generations that have carried this burden long before me, and for the ones who will follow. It's overwhelming at times, but if I only thought about healing for myself, I know I would give up. I would let the pain win. So I remind myself daily, I am doing this for all of us, for the ones I will never meet, but whose lives will be better because of the changes I make now. That thought, knowing that my healing has a ripple effect, keeps me going even when I don't think I can take another step. This is what drives me. Spirituality, recovery, and understanding, that's what keeps me grounded. And it's not just about me anymore. It's about becoming the ancestor that future generations will look up to, the one they pray to for guidance and strength. I want to be that person, the one who breaks the chains and allows my family line to rise above the darkness that has haunted us for so long. It's a wild thought, right? That we have the power to change the course of generations, to break ancestral patterns. But that's exactly what I believe now. I see it all as part of a much bigger story. One that isn't just my personal struggle, but a collective one that we are all part of. Every soul on this planet is just trying to figure it out. We're born into this world, and it's a harsh one. We come in screaming, and the world doesn't hold back. We're just trying to survive. And the stories we tell ourselves, they are the coping mechanisms that keep us sane. Religion, addiction, success, failure, they're all stories. And sometimes those stories can destroy us, but they can also save us. When I was trapped in addiction, I thought I was living my story. It was the only story I knew. I convinced myself that the pain, the chaos, was normal. I didn't see a way out, and I didn't think there was one. But then something shifted. I started to change my story. I began to understand that pain doesn't define me. It shapes me, but it doesn't have to break me. And when I started to heal, I realized something else. This journey was bigger than just me. It was about finding power in my pain, purpose in my suffering. It's the ultimate hero's journey, and every single one of us has the opportunity to step into it. If I can do it, anyone can. That's the lesson I carry with me every day. That's the story I tell myself now. And it's what keeps me moving forward. Because if we only heal for ourselves, if we only focus on our own pain, it's easy to get lost. But when you realize you're part of a much bigger tapestry, it changes everything. It gives you purpose. It gives you strength. And most importantly, it gives you hope. So I'm doing this for me, but I'm doing it for them too. The ancestors, the generations to come. This is my way of breaking the cycle. This is how I make my life count. And if that's what keeps me going, then I'll keep going. Because I believe it's not just about healing myself, it's about healing all of us. When I had my near-death experience, I didn't just go through a typical life review. It wasn't just me reliving my own life. I found myself experiencing the pain of others. Specifically, the grief of my aunt, who had just lost her child. I could see her face, feel her agony, as if I were walking through her shoes. But it didn't stop there. I also felt the pain of my parents' suicide, not just from my perspective as a grieving daughter, but from their eyes too. It was as though I was living in two realities simultaneously. The pain was all-consuming, an ocean of sorrow that felt like it was drowning me. Every cell in my body seemed to be covered in spikes, as if I was being torn apart by the sheer force of that agony. In that moment, I honestly thought I must be dead. I was seeing dead people, feeling their emotions, experiencing things I couldn't explain. But I didn't expect it to feel like this. It wasn't a peaceful transition, and it sure wasn't what I had imagined death would be. It felt like my body had just given up, and I was lost in a swirl of emotions that seemed never-ending. At first, I didn't even realize I was having a life review. I was just overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. I remember lying there on the bathroom floor, feeling the weight of everything crash down on me. It wasn't until years later that I understood what had happened, that I had been experiencing a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. This is what many people call a life force activation, and for me, it was like being plugged into the entire universe. It wasn't just about my life. I was experiencing everyone's life. The grief, the joy, the anger, the love. I felt it all. It was as if my soul was traveling through the full spectrum of human emotion, rapidly shifting between grief, anger, apathy, acceptance, and unconditional love. It felt like I was being tossed around in a washing machine, spiraling through the highs and lows of existence at lightning speed. I wasn't in a physical space. Everything I was seeing and experiencing came from my mind's eye. There were no walls, no physical boundaries, just this vast open space where I could tap into every feeling, every experience that had ever been. There was no light, no tunnel. It was all internal. I wasn't sure if I had actually died. No one had pronounced me dead. It felt like a part of me had died, but my body was still here, strung out on that bathroom floor, lost in this overwhelming experience. Despite the intensity, I didn't feel judged. That's one of the things people often ask about, the life review, and whether it's about being judged. But for me, it wasn't about condemnation. It wasn't about someone else telling me what I had done wrong. It was me confronting myself, my own actions, my own choices. I felt everything. I could feel how my actions had hurt others, not just physically, but emotionally. It was raw and real, no filters, no excuses. The most painful part was not seeing what I had done to others, but feeling it in the deepest parts of my being. I could feel their pain, their suffering, as if I had inflicted it myself. And then something shifted. Amidst all the chaos and the pain, I heard a familiar voice, my father's voice. He began chanting softly, "You are worthy of all the love in the universe." And it wasn't just his voice. As I tuned in, I began to hear the voices of all the men who had ever been significant in my life. They were there, guiding me, comforting me, pulling me towards something different. I trusted those voices. I trusted my father's voice, and it was as if that trust led me to the light. I moved into the light, and that's when my experience took a drastic turn. The shift was profound. As I entered the light, it felt like I was walking into another world, one that seemed more alive than anything I'd ever known. It was like stepping into a grand stage of a cosmic play, and I was suddenly aware of the role I was meant to play. I was surrounded by thousands of souls, all of us gathered like soldiers before a battle. Our commander, a higher consciousness, loving, wise and deeply reassuring, standing in front of us. It felt like we were all special volunteers, chosen for something grand. We were part of the transformation of consciousness, part of a universal mission that was bigger than any of us could fully comprehend. Everyone around me was excited, full of energy, ready to dive into this earthly experience, eager to fulfill their roles in the grand scheme of things. It was like the best team I had ever been on, all of us connected in a way I couldn't have imagined before. But even then, the journey wasn't over. I found myself standing before a table where beings were flipping through a giant book. I didn't need to ask who they were. They were the ones in charge. They told me I wasn't meant to stay, that I was there for information and I had to keep moving forward. I could feel the pull, like I had unfinished business, something I needed to do before I could truly rest. And then came the most surreal moment of all. I found myself in a supermarket, running down aisles like in a game show, filling up my cart with life experiences. Each box of cereal represented a different experience: addiction, poverty, trauma, love, loss. My soul was grabbing it all. I was already committed to the life path I had chosen. My family line was already set, but I was picking up these experiences because they were mine to live through. They were the soul lessons I had agreed to learn in this lifetime. That moment, the supermarket of life, was my pre-birth planning. I wasn't a fresh soul. I was seeing the blueprint of my existence, the choices I made, and the things I had to go through. It was both overwhelming and enlightening. I had chosen it all, from the pain to the triumphs. And now, standing in that moment, I understood. This was the journey I had chosen. I was ready to dive into it all, to live out the full range of experiences that would transform me. One of the most profound experiences I've had, one that I feel compelled to share, is the realization that I chose my experience of childhood sexual trauma. Now, I know that may sound strange, even controversial, but allow me to walk you through this journey. I remember standing in the kitchen, just reaching for a cereal box. As I pulled it out, something unexpected happened, something that completely shifted my perception of reality. From the box, a small orb of light emerged. This orb wasn't just any light. It was the soul of the man who had abused me as a child. At first, I was confused, but in that moment, something remarkable happened. The light orb and I came together, orb to orb. We made a silent contract, an agreement that transcended words, time, and even logic. I saw flashes of past lives, and one of the most striking revelations was that, in a previous life, I had been his abuser. In this life, we were balancing the energies between us. He was the villain in my story, and I, in a strange way, had chosen to play the role of the victim. But here's the truth. It wasn't just about me. As I stood there, floating in this new awareness, I understood that this experience wasn't merely for my personal healing. It was for every child who doesn't get the opportunity to heal from their own pain and trauma. It was for every little girl, every boy who suffers in silence. My suffering, I realized, was connected to the larger universal healing of humanity. And with this, my perspective shifted dramatically. I no longer saw myself as a victim. It was as though a heavy shell had fallen away from me. I could feel tons of weight lifted off my spirit. I was free from the chains of victimhood. I wasn't just a product of what had happened to me. I was a divine co-creator, crafting my life's experiences in partnership with the universe. This realization gave me a sense of empowerment I had never felt before. I found myself standing before a table of beings of light, beings of wisdom. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of gratitude. Gratitude for this revelation, for this new understanding of life and of myself. I felt deeply grateful for the clarity that had been bestowed upon me. But there was still a question lingering in my heart. What about Earth? This place is a mess. It's chaotic and painful. Why would I want to return to such an environment? In that moment, I tried to resist the idea of going back. I imagined myself relaxing, watching the chaos unfold from a higher vantage point, free from the suffering that the world below would continue to endure. I envisioned myself in my pajamas, a bowl of popcorn in hand, watching Earth's drama unfold like a show. But then, to my dismay, the beings of light told me, "You're going back." I resisted. I kicked and screamed, throwing an internal tantrum. "No, I won't go back. I can't," I cried out. "You don't tell us the truth about what Earth is really like." They smiled, a gentle smile that conveyed deep understanding, almost amusement. "You say that every time you come back," they replied. "You've trained for this moment across lifetimes. Your mission is to help bring about the transformation of consciousness on Earth. You can't miss this opportunity." I wanted to refuse, to stay in the peace and clarity of this moment forever, but I knew they were right. This was my purpose. And so, with reluctance, I agreed. But there was still another challenge. I could see my body, my physical form, lying crumpled on the floor. It was damaged, broken, seemingly beyond repair. How could I go back into this? It's a mess, I thought. It's too much, it's impossible. But then they showed me something else. They showed me a baby, a new soul. This was the body I would inhabit in the next life. As I observed this baby, I saw a new life unfolding, one with even more challenges than the one I had just experienced. This baby would face immense adversity. I hesitated. I can't do this, I thought. Not from the beginning. It's too much. But the beings of light reassured me. You don't have to go back into the body you just came from, but your mission remains the same. They explained that the first part of my life had been like boot camp. It was grueling, difficult and painful. But now, my real mission was beginning. The second part of my life would be about carrying out that mission. There would be a team waiting for me, soulmates, mentors, kindred spirits. It would be different. It would be better. I wouldn't even be able to comprehend just how much better it would be. Still, I didn't fully trust them. I resisted with all my might. But eventually I found myself back in my body. It felt like a surreal, disorienting moment. I convinced myself it had been some kind of drug-induced psychosis. I shook my head trying to clear the fog, but deep down I knew what I had experienced was real. It was not a dream. It wasn't a delusion. It was a glimpse into a deeper truth. And then life continued. I went back to my old patterns, my old ways of coping, trying to numb the pain, thinking I had imagined the whole thing. But over time, the universe kept guiding me back to that realization, one step at a time, until I couldn't deny it any longer. Now, looking back, I see that everything, every struggle, every pain, every tear, was part of a greater plan. My trauma wasn't a mistake. It was part of my soul's purpose. And as I heal, I send out ripples of healing to the world around me. After years of living with addiction, my mind was only cluttered with one thing: the next high. I didn't have room for anything else. But when my awareness finally cracked open, I realized I needed more. I wanted to understand life, the universe, spirituality, anything that would help me make sense of the chaos. I dove headfirst into books. My hunger for knowledge was insatiable. I wanted to know everything, from the mysteries of quantum mechanics to the secrets of existence itself. One day, while I was in the library, something caught my eye, a book shimmering on the shelf. As I got closer, I saw the title, A Course in Miracles. There was something magnetic about it. I picked it up and devoured it as if it were the only thing that mattered. I didn't fully understand what I was reading, but the words felt like they were resonating with my soul. I became obsessed and started searching for more information. The librarian was baffled, saying the book didn't exist in their collection. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the key to something bigger. Eventually, while I was at the rehab facility, the clinical director saw me carrying several books on A Course in Miracles and shared that she had an old copy from the 70s. She offered to let me borrow it, and I was beyond grateful. During my 17 months of treatment, I not only read that book, but also every spiritual text I could get my hands on. I created my own spirituality by blending teachings that resonated with me, a spiritual smorgasbord, as I like to call it. But the real challenge came when I started to confront my ego. My ego had been my protector for so long, built through years of addiction and trauma. It was like a mask I wore for survival. But I realized my ego, though essential, wasn't the true me. It had served me, but it was time to redefine its role. I had to give my shadow, a part of me that was driven by fear and defense, a new purpose. It wasn't about erasing it, but learning to integrate it into my highest self. It's a process that's ongoing, but one I'm fully committed to. Every part of me, including my shadow, is here to help me grow. Addiction in my life wasn't just a habit. It had a name, a shape, a presence. His name was Richard. Richard was my addiction, but he wasn't just some vague shadow lurking in the background. No, he was a figure, a gay man, flamboyant and loud, always pushing me to indulge, to give in to what I thought I wanted. He'd scream at me from the corners of my mind, tempting me with things I had sworn off. "Let's have a drink," he'd coax, and I would have to remind myself, "No, Richard, we don't drink anymore." But here's the thing. I couldn't just get rid of him. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't eliminate this part of me. Ignoring him only made him louder. So I had to learn to coexist with Richard, with my addiction. I had to bring in my highest self, not to fight him, but to offer compassion. Because Richard wasn't my enemy. He was a part of me, and my journey was about understanding why he was there. This wasn't just about substances. Once I got my substance abuse under control, other addictions came to the surface. I struggled with eating disorders, then moved to sex and codependency, always chasing something outside of myself to fill the void. I realized my ego, my inner saboteur, and my critic. These were all my attempts to protect myself. My spiritual path wasn't just about healing one aspect. It was about healing all of it. And in that process, I began to appreciate who I was beyond the pain, beyond the addictions. I never thought I could break free. But now, looking back, I know that the very things I thought would break me, my trauma, my addictions, are the very things that made me who I am today. They've led me to triumph, not as a victim, but as someone who's learned to use every part of myself, every shadow, to create light. And now, my story isn't just mine. It's proof that transformation is possible. When I think back to the time after my awakening, I realize that the experience gifted me with some truly extraordinary abilities. At first, everything felt overwhelming. My senses were tangled together in ways that I couldn't have imagined. I could taste music, feel colors, and see energy. It was like I was living in a world where every sensation had no boundaries. It was wild, and honestly, I wasn't sure I could handle it. So I asked for it all to be taken away. I wasn't ready to go from 0 to infinity. I needed something in between. How was I supposed to be a human? I wondered. I didn't need to know what a note of music tasted like, or feel every vibration of life all at once. It was too much. But in time, I learned to appreciate these gifts in a way that felt manageable. I didn't want to ignore them or reject them completely, but I didn't want to be overwhelmed by them either. Over the years, my abilities shifted into something that was more grounded. Now, I've realized that I have a gift for manifestation. I became a master manifester, using the law of attraction not just for myself, but to help others too. Whether I'm working one-on-one with someone or guiding people through spiritual healing, I teach them how to use these tools. And if I, someone who once had nothing but addiction and chaos, can do it, so can they. One of my other gifts is community building. There's something incredibly powerful about bringing people together, about creating spaces where people feel seen and accepted, where they can heal together. That's something I never expected to find in my journey. I spent so much of my life isolated, consumed by my own struggles. But now, being able to help others find their own healing communities, watching them grow and support each other, is truly one of the greatest joys I have. Looking back, everything I went through, every painful experience, every setback, every battle with addiction, it all prepared me for this. In the moment, I hated it. I resented it. But now I see it all as training. Those 35 years, full of darkness, were my training ground. The wounds I carried, the trauma I faced, they've shaped me into someone who can truly understand and help others through their own pain. I've been where they are. I've felt what they feel. That's why I can sit with people in their worst moments and hold space for them. That's why I do the work I do today. One of the biggest shifts in my life came when I began to understand that everything, even the most traumatic parts of our lives, has meaning. I used to ask, why me? But now I understand that it's not about why, but how. How am I going to rise from this? How am I going to use these experiences to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate? Those questions have shaped everything I do. But what's even more incredible is realizing that the work isn't over. Healing is an ongoing process. I'm not perfect, and I don't pretend to be. Yes, I've come a long way, but I still have backslides. Sometimes my old patterns creep in. There are days when I struggle. Success has been a hard thing for me to embrace, and it's still a challenge. But every day, I take the opportunity to be better than I was the day before. Every day is a new chance to improve, to show up, and to stay present. And you know, that's really the key. Presence. We live in a world that constantly tells us to look ahead, to be prepared for the future, to anticipate what's next. But what I've learned through my journey is that the true magic happens in the present moment. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, in the story of what could happen or what has happened. But the only moment we really have is now. And that's where the true transformation takes place. For those of you going through your own awakenings or dark nights of the soul, I want to offer you this advice. Don't do it alone. Find your tribe. Find your community. Whether it's a spiritual group, a recovery program, or just a group of supportive friends, connection is key. We were never meant to go through this alone. I've learned that more than anything, we need each other. We came here in tribes for a reason, and those connections will help you navigate the tough times. When you're going through the shadows, when you're facing your deepest fears and your darkest parts, it's easy to feel like you're alone, but you're not. We're all in this together, and we all have a role to play in each other's healing. And if you're struggling with your own beliefs or your fears about what comes after this life, know this: there is so much more beyond what we can see. And yes, I know it's scary. I get it. But that's why we're here, to learn, to grow, to experience contrast. Without the lows, we wouldn't appreciate the highs. We need both to fully understand the beauty of life. Life is tough, there's no denying that. We all face challenges, and some of us face greater hardships than others. But if I can stand here today and say that I'm living my dream after everything I've been through, then so can you. You are not defined by your past. You are not stuck in your story. You have the power to rewrite it, to step into the life you want to live. It's all within your reach. And as I look back on my journey, I can honestly say that I wouldn't change a thing. All of the struggles, the pain, the trauma, they all brought me to this moment. They gave me the strength to do what I do now. And now, every day, I'm living my purpose. I'm helping others find their way, guiding them through their own struggles, and showing them that they too can create the life they deserve. So to anyone watching this, I want you to know that your transformation is possible. It might not be easy, but it's worth it. You're not alone in this. You can rise from your darkest days, and you can find your own light. Keep going. Your journey is unfolding exactly as it's meant to. You are worthy of everything life has to offer. Keep your heart open and keep moving forward. You've got this. As I stand here today, sharing my story with all of you, I can't help but feel the immense power of transformation. From the depths of darkness to the light of purpose, I've walked a path that most would call impossible. But here I am, and here you are, right now at the perfect moment to embrace your own journey of growth and awakening. I want to tell you something powerful. Your story isn't over. No matter where you're at, no matter the struggle, you have the strength to rise above it all. I've been through hell, and I'm proof that if I can come back from that, so can you. The world is changing, and the great awakening is happening now, all around us. This is your time to be part of something bigger, to break free from the chains of your past, and to step into the life you were always meant to live. So if this message resonates with you, if you feel a spark of hope or inspiration in your heart, I want you to do something right now. Like, comment, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message of hope and strength. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because there's so much more to come. Every week I'll be bringing you more stories, more insights, and more ways for you to embrace your own transformation. But most importantly, remember, you are divinely supported. You are worthy of all the love, abundance, and blessings the universe has to offer. May God bless you, and may you continue to rise higher with every step. The journey is just beginning. Let's walk it together.